The chameleonic Alex Kajelski, the newly appointed BBC Sport director, is a radical feminist and gay rights activist, with a long history of promoting gay and women's sport, while attacking men and men's sports. Perhaps those were the traits that made him the suitable replacement for his predecessor, Barbara Slater, the renowned feminist and gay icon, the first female head who took BBC Sport, from being the most popular sports broadcaster in the UK on TV, radio and digital platforms, to where it is now. Along the way, she guided the BBC through some of the darkest times in BBC and sporting history, including losing the live coverage of Formula One, and several of the BBC's other most popular sporting events, and culminating in the Gary Lineker debacle. This astonishing performance earned the Oxford-educated Barbara an OBE, and on being pushed out of the supposedly independent BBC, some 6 months after her disastrous attempt to end Gary Lineker's career, at the behest of her political masters, she was pastured out to DIE at the IOC. It is telling that her successor was appointed on the back of the infamous hatchet job that he did on Samuel Eto'o, Africa's most decorated footballer and current head of the Cameroonian Football Association. By way of a brief summary, Alex capped off what was supposed to have been a warm and friendly interview with the multilingual Samuel, for whom English is probably the language he is least fluent in.
South African footballers. Do you know South African footballers?
Yes, of course.
Yeah?
Yeah. Steven I play with him in Everton.
Steven Pienaar?
Steven Pienaar.
Yeah?
Benny McCarthy.
With the headline in quotation marks, Africa has more talent than Europe, but it doesn't understand education. The quotation marks in this headline, which carried both overt and covert racist implications, falsely represented that those words were spoken directly by Samuel. But an extensive Google search could not produce those words verbatim. Those words can only be found as Alex's headline, and the article itself has since been removed from the internet. However, all available references to the headline, some of which contain segments of the article, clearly show that Alex couched a forged quotation, in racist dog whistles, to fake a sensational headline, that he knew would be highly damaging to Samuel, who by that time was the president of the Cameroonian Football Federation. The fact that the article page can no longer be found on the internet, speaks to its veracity and Alex's character. Yet, it was on the back of this article, that he was appointed to succeed Barbara. It therefore appears that far from being put off by Alex's race baiting, the BBC were drawn to him for this very skill set. Unsurprisingly, the chameleon blended into his new surroundings, and following on in his predecessor's footsteps, stepped up the BBC's attacks on Sir Lewis. As our previous visitors will recall, we were alerted to the BBC's racism by the fact that they were in the forefront of efforts to falsely represent that there was some confusion about whether or not Michael Marcy was entitled to steal Sir Lewis's 8th title and gift it to Max Verstappen. This was for us the darkest moment in BBC and sporting history bar none, and still to this day, makes a mockery of any attempts by the BBC to represent that it is against fake news. Perhaps, BBC Sport under Barbara was motivated to whitewash Liberty Media's crime, in the vain hope of securing some live F1 coverage in the future, but one thing's for sure, there was no black person anywhere in the orbit of that decision. Alex has continued the BBC's attack on Sir Lewis, using frontline soldiers like Andrew Benson, but this time around he has added a new twist. In addition to the insidious articles and blatant propaganda, the BBC are now choosing to not report on how well Sir Lewis's epic transfer to Ferrari is going down in Italy. The BBC's coverage of this momentous news that rocked F1, and is still reverberating around Formula One and the wider world, is muted to say the least. Beyond the obvious announcement of the move, we have been unable to find any comments or articles in the BBC on the seismic impact the news has been having. For example, there is no mention of the $7 billion bump in Ferrari share value on the day of the announcement. No mention of the unprecedented levels of welcome he has been receiving as F1 traveled around the globe. No mention of the Italian media going crazy over his arrival, which is not until next season. No mention of the hysteria in Italy in the run-up to and during the Imola GP, on Ferrari's home ground. No mention of the sold-out race tickets, hotels, memorabilia, etc., etc., etc. There is no way for anyone accessing BBC Sport on any of their platforms to discern the extent to which Italy has gone Lou crazy. To get any sense of this, one would have to go elsewhere. Why is that? In stark comparison, BBC Sport is inundated with news about Lando Norris and his maiden victory in the Miami Grand Prix, which was held on the 5th of this month. Of course, we are delighted for Lando and wish him more success going forward, but this is not about him. This is about why the BBC is suppressing news about Sir Lewis. Why does Lando Norris's maiden victory in Miami significantly outweigh Lewis mania in Imola? The BBC are doing everything they can to normalize the theft of his 8th title, besmirch him with barbed comments throughout all their platforms, and now they are suppressing positive news about him. Again, by comparison, we could not find any headlines referencing Lando Norris' maiden victory in the Italian media in the run-up to Imola, but guess who dominated the headlines? So why are Italians showing so much love to the British man that the British Broadcasting Corporation is doing all it can to break down? What is it about Sir Lewis that irks the BBC so? What is it about Samuel and Sir Lewis that irks Alex so?